Hi everyone. Thanks for logging on. Just on International Day of Persons with Disabilities, I suppose we at Migraine Ireland we just wanted to acknowledge that, and also specifically to acknowledge that migraine is oftentimes an invisible illness that people live with. So I suppose the point of today is kind of just to say that we see you and we hear you, and so it's myself and Deirdre. We're just going to go through a little bit just around migraine. And I suppose our CEO Pascal often says this: perception's not reality, and I think that's particularly true of migraine on a day like today. Just that someone with migraine may often seem like they have a lot together, and what they go through can be very private and very silent and invisible. So that's kind of what our talk is about today. And I we have our regulars that join a lot of our talks, and so hopefully some of you guys are there today listen, and we also have hopefully some new people. And so some of you might be familiar with Deirdre, who is our regional development officer. And she I suppose was like, there you're kind of like, in Ireland we have the tradition of the bard or the filla, who kind of keeps the story and, like holds the history and the past and present and the future of all the who's who and their mother and everything. And I just kind of think that when I was going through all the bits and pieces you sent me about Deirdre, I kind of just thought that you are that for the migraine community. So as well as knowing everything there is to know about mine. So without further ado, Deirdre is now going to give the talk completely in Irish.
Yes. No, I don't think so.
Just
thank
want to
you
go
very
through
much.
a little bit of heritage and that kind of thing, and
Thanks a million, Naomi. Wow, Bard. I don't think so. That's one thing I haven't been called before, Bard. But I do appreciate the analogy. Yes, very nice. Hi, everyone. Thanks a million for joining us today. As Naomi said, I hope you do get something out of this. If you've only been newly diagnosed with migraine, or you've never heard of it, or you know somebody with migraine, but you just don't kind of understand quite what it is, maybe something in this will give you a little bit of an idea. But what we're concentrating on today really is the fact that, as Naomi mentioned, and what our CEO Pascal says, is the perception and the reality. So the perception of migraine being that it's a headache. The reality being is that it is so much more, but an awful lot of it, in fact, practically all of it, is invisible. But what I want to do first is just give you a little idea of MAI, Migraine Association of Ireland, and the programs and services that we have. So we were created in 1994. So which means we'll be going up to 30 years soon. So that will be nice. We are the only charity in the country for people with primary headache disorders, being disorders that are not caused by any underlying issues, such as migraine and things like tension type headache and cluster headache. So if you know of anybody who lives with any of those, you can definitely signpost them towards us. So some of the programs and services we offer include seminars and webinars, patients, workplace, and healthcare professionals. We do try to educate. It sounds a bit arrogant, educating healthcare professionals. They're very well educated, but I suppose inform them of what happens during migraine and what patients experience with migraine, aside from the whole guidelines and the medical end of things. Provide information leaflets, diaries for adults and children. They can be really helpful to track patterns and triggers and so on. We have our website, which has a lot of information on it. We have an old podcast series, but we will be working on a new podcast series, but the podcast series is still available as far as I know on our website. We also have all our social media, so you can follow us on that. And we have an e-zine or an online newsletter just that you can sign up for. If you want to become a supporter, you can. Would be really grateful, because we don't get huge amount of funding. So any little bit, as Mr. Tesco says, and every little helps. So anything that you can, spare, if you want to, you can become a member for as little as €3 a month if you want to sign up. Again, you can see all that on the website. And if you have any questions or comments about anything, you can email us at info@migraine.ie. Anyway, onwards and upwards. So migraine, this is just a kind of a rundown of what we're going to touch on. I'm not going to go into any great detail or in depth in anything, just kind of a quick kind of overview. So we talk about migraine in ancient times, why it's still invisible, why people with migraine hide it a lot, what it is and what it isn't, a couple of facts about migraine that might help with people who don't seem to understand, general or typical symptoms, different phases, non-headache symptoms, which are the really bits that people don't recognize, the effects on people living with migraine, how we can help ourselves to change our thoughts, which is quite important, because depression comes with migraine, not just because we have migraine, because we're depressed about feeling the pain, but there's also a physiological reason that depression comes with migraine. And then how do we make it more visible? What can we do to kind of push forward and create awareness? And then we finally end on some lifestyle tips. So, yep, hope everybody enjoys that. Okay, so in ancient times, migraine was great crack. I wouldn't advise anybody to try a lot of this at home, because it's, well, aside from being weird, it's a bit, some of it can be a bit not so nice. So in ancient Egypt, and again, this came from, a lot of this is related to the ancient gods, or the perceptions of ancient gods. In ancient Egypt, they would put a clay crocodile on somebody's head. It represented the crocodile headed god Sobek, and it was said to have cured or have helped the god Horus, who apparently had terrible headaches. So that was one thing. Probably not harmful, clay crocodile, but again, where are you going to get a clay crocodile these days? In ancient Greece, you could sleep in the temple of Asclepius, the god of healing, while a cleansing ritual was being performed. Asclepius was the god of healing. He came from the god Apollo, who is the god of sunlight, which we migraineurs don't like at all. So to stay inside in the dark of the temple and the coolness of the temple, I don't know what the cleansing ritual would have been, but once it was being performed by the priests and by the god of healing's priests specifically, it was said to have helped your migraine or your headache.
Mesopotamia, which are now Iran and Iraq, respectively, got this headache cure. Apparently, it cured one of their gods, a guy named Marduk or Marduk. It's pretty specific, as you can see. Take water from the junction of two streams, get hair from a virgin kid goat, and let a wise woman spin it on the right side and double it on the left.
Perform an incantation, which is probably lost, and bind the head of the sick man, bind the neck of the sick man, bind up his limbs, and surround his bed. I'm not sure about that. The binding of the head, yes, possibly would be a good thing. Binding of the neck, not so much bind, but care of the neck, because neck is often involved in migraine as a trigger. And then sprinkle the water over him, and the headache will lift to heaven. Sounds heavenly. It'd be amazing. So on to ancient Rome. Sorry, apologies, just technical hitches. This one is quite an interesting one. So chameleon lizard in wine and sprinkle the wine on the sufferer's head. Now, I know a lot of people with migraine can't take wine, but I think the wine would probably work better on the migraine without the chameleon. And then in Europe, medieval Europe during the Dark Ages, and I will say this, I'm quoting an episode of Stargate SG-1, They didn't call them the Dark Ages because it was dark. Trepanning was the traditional solution to a lot of these head problems and headaches, which were believed to have been caused by evil spirits. So they would drill a hole into the skull to a certain distance, not all the way into the brain, hopefully, to release whatever evil spirits possess the person causing the headache. And ironically, drilling the hole would release some of the pressure, so it would in fact get rid of the headache if it didn't kill the person. And today we still do a similar procedure called craniotomy that can have some kind of it can have some similarities, but again, it's not something you try at home. Even in colonial America, when people were just finding their feet, the colonies, they would have brought this kind of stuff over from Britain and from the rest of Europe, dipping leaves, any kind, in water 4 times, hold it in your mouth, and then spit it on the sufferer's head. But they have to be facing east, or it doesn't work. And then here in Ireland, in ancient times, I mean, taking the hand of or off a corpse and touching the head with it. No, thank you. Or the corner of a sheet used to wrap a corpse to cure headache. Again, a bit gruesome. But the next one, interesting, rub a bull on, or a cure stone. I know there's one there's St. Patrick's bull on. I'm not sure where it is, but there is a cure stone. They're traditionally, to know a bull on, they're usually stones with a little dip in them. And the dip was created to hold water, and sometimes the dip is smoothed out because people have been touching it. And the idea is to touch it, to rub it, and then to put your hand on your head after you've rubbed the stone. There are a few bull-ons around the country. Again, you'd have to look up where they are, but they are still there, and still people, you'll see them, you'll often see hawthorn trees with ribbons tied to them as either a prayer to remove whatever illness, or a prayer for somebody's health, or so on and so forth. So that's just an idea of migraine in ancient times. And that's thousands of years ago that it was known about. And the question that we're asking is, if thousands of years ago they knew to put a clay crocodile on somebody's head, why is migraine still so invisible and still so underdiagnosed, or misdiagnosed? And how is it that we don't know yet how to help people with migraine properly, how to cure it? We don't know. We're guessing. They don't know quite what's happening in the brain. They know that these things are released, substances are released, and that cause dilation, but they don't know why. So again, thousands of years later, we're still no further along with a cure for migraine, unfortunately. But why is it still so invisible? Here we go. Poor hysterical women. That's one of the things that's always been attributed to us women, and our hysteria, and our imaginations, and our stress. And we get so stressed up, we get so we're unable to cope well with anything. We get hysterical very, very easily, and that was it. Just hysterical women. It was a women's disease, and we were, in those days, of course, we were better seen and not heard. And when we become hysterical, then just sit down and fan yourself, and stay out of the way of the men, because men had to do important stuff. Not that I'm slagging off all men, because men do absolutely get migraine, so they do. But the suggested cure at the time for women who became hysterical and got headaches was marriage and rest. So the rest, yes, but I'm not so sure about marriage. But I'm not married, so I will leave that up to you individually to decide whether marriage works or not in the case of migraine. Migraineurs then become experts at masking or hiding their disorder and different emotions and symptoms and effects that are part of it. And hiding is, they become like the chameleon, the wine, except the wine, without the wine. They become kind of chameleons. So because migraine is invisible, you look fine between and during sometimes a bad attack. And people with chronic migraine can look fine, even though every day is a living hell with migraine and the different effects on them. So hiding hysteria, the perception, is they're part of the reasons why it's still so invisible. But why do people hide it? I mean, again, it's part of the perception. This is, a lot of people experience these kind of things. So why, when you mention migraine, you'd be told, oh, I've had really bad headaches before, but I took paracetamol and I was fine. Happy for you, but that's not a migraine. So did you eat or drink something to bring it on? That's another thing that really annoys people, because there's an element of blame in that. And I know even a friend of mine who has chronic migraine, and her husband is well used to her having really bad attacks or exacerbations of her symptoms. The first question he asks is, what did you eat or what did you drink? And, you know, she's, well, you know, I'm not doing this to myself. It's not me. And she's very good at watching what she eats or drinks, and she knows her triggers, which is good. So no, she didn't eat or drink anything to bring it on. Another one is, it's just stress. You need to relax more. Yeah, if only. Stress is a big thing, all right, but people just don't understand the stress of a migraine leads to more stress. Stress can be a trigger. So it's a vicious circle. And relaxing can be a good thing, but it's not just stress. That's very dismissive. And the other, you know, helpful, oh, you were out last night drinking. Oh, I don't think so. It's a hangover. A lot of the time feels like a hangover, especially the prodrome, the fourth phase, which is something we'll talk about later. It feels like a hangover, but there's no alcohol involved, unfortunately. And then, did you drink water? You could be dehydrated. Dehydration, yes, is a problem with migraine, but yes, I drank loads of water. There's no problem. Obviously, a headache, again, you know, why do you always have a headache, or you seem to always have a headache, and, you know, like, there must be something else wrong with you, or really, you've got a headache. I mean, come on, we all get headaches. Look, people have the best intentions, and there are suggestions there that they're trying to suggest, you know, give people the benefit of the doubt that they're doing it from a good place, that, you know, oh, this is something I've tried, or, you know, maybe this is a solution and that kind of thing. It just comes off sometimes as a bit dismissive. But like I said, people generally want to help you, or they generally want to be nice to you and that kind of thing. So if you don't take it personally, unless it's somebody who does it all the time and you know that they know, then it can be really frustrating. But if you don't take it personally and take it as it's coming from a good place, then it can, you know, it's nice to know that people do care and they're offering solutions. Okay, so migraine is a hidden disability. So what is it? It is a complex, common neurological disorder. It is a burden with physically and mentally disabling symptoms. It's painful, especially when the headache is involved, but pain can be in other places other than the head. It's disorientating. It is confusing. You can get very confused and very disorientated. It's damaging to your mental and physical health. It's misunderstood an awful lot, and we've seen that, and it's misdiagnosed and underdiagnosed. Unfortunately, a lot of the education in a lot of the medical education for doctors when they go into college to start learning, primary headaches are not as much of a priority as the red flag headaches, which you can understand because their primary headaches generally are not fatal, but some of the red flag headaches are. So obviously there has to be an emphasis on those. But at the same time, living with a primary headache condition, especially chronic, can be very damaging. So there does need to be a little bit more education out there, a little bit more awareness among the medical community, particularly. But what migraine is not, as we've said, it's not just a headache. There are myriad symptoms that, and headache, if it is there, it's not always there, but if it is there, it's not always the most disabling or the most annoying symptom. Stress, it's not stress. there is stress definitely with regards to migraine, and stress can be a massive trigger, but the migraine, it's not down to stress. So it's not. Stress can definitely exacerbate symptoms. It can trigger symptoms, but migraine is not stress. You just get stressed listening to people talking about stress and migraine. It's not easy to get rid of. You can't just take one pill and it's gone. Some people are lucky and they can. And from time to time, it depends on the migraine. Sometimes you get a migraine that's not so difficult to treat. Other times you you don't. Sometimes and a lot of people who live with chronic migraine, they have symptoms every single day. So taking one pill is, okay, you might have to take a pill every single day to try and lower the frequency and the severity. But generally speaking, you can't get rid of it, and there is no cure. So that's another thing to keep in mind. It's not laziness. Most people who live with migraine want to work, want to do the same things as everybody else, and all the stuff that everybody takes for granted. They want to do their job to the very best of their ability, and they do, but it takes a toll. It's not a hangover. Like I said, we can go through the phases later. But one of the phases feels like and mimics a hangover. It's not your imagination. You're not hysterical. It's not hypochondria. It's not, like I said, women's disease. A lot of men live with migraine. A lot of men, because I think this is purely my opinion, a lot of men, there's a perception that men have to be strong and have to be, they can't complain about, little things like headaches, things like that. It's really difficult for a woman,
See,
but
actually, just on that one, the men, like, you're saying it's your opinion, but you're right. Like, there has been research, and I know there's been a big drive to actually to back up exactly what you're saying. That perception that there's a stigma around men asking for help, and that then will and can prevent them seeking help at an earlier stage for something like that's dismissed as a headache. And then that can also then have a knock-on effect of maybe they might be less likely to come forward with it earlier when it's easier to intervene, if that makes sense.
yeah, absolutely.
It could be harder then to kind of set them on the right track then if the headache is building and getting worse and worse, and they're caught in cycles and things like that with it. So absolutely what you're saying, I think this is very true.
Yeah, and so I mean, if you are a man and you do live with migraine, or if you get frequent headaches and you haven't yet been diagnosed, it's not unusual. It's not your fault. It's a neurological disorder. Remember, this is the brain. So please contact us, and we can give you lots of information about it, because it is difficult again, we're going back to perception, the perception of a man's role and a man's, it's not medieval times, but we're still stuck with some of these stereotypes, unfortunately, and they make it really difficult for people to get adequate help and appropriate help. Another thing it's not is an excuse to get out of work, school, or social occasions. It's particularly difficult with children because a lot of the time it doesn't manifest the same as with an adult. So a lot of the time it can manifest in their stomach and they'll have a sick stomach. So a lot of people call it or mistake it for what we call schoolitis, so trying to get out of going to school, whereas in fact it is migraine. So it's just something to keep in mind if your child regularly has a sick stomach in the morning before they go to school. The stress of school can trigger migraines. The stress of being in school, so you've got the lighting, you've got the whiteboards with the lighting bouncing off, the reflection of the lighting bouncing off it. You've got more kids doing their work on computers or tablets and things like that. So a lot of this kind of can be sensory overload for kids. It's the same in work. If you work with computers a lot, or if you work in a noisy place, a noisy factory, or if you're outside and you're working in traffic, there's a lot of noise, there's a lot of light and things like that can trigger. So work can have a detrimental effect on people with migraine, but it's not an excuse to stop working, because as I said before, people with migraine, they definitely will work harder because of the perception. But unfortunately, they're not always able to. And social occasions as well. You're talking about family gatherings, especially this time of the year coming up to Christmas. And you've got the pressures of being a brilliant host and having all these people around you and bringing alcohol and food and, you know, all the blinky lights and the flashing lights and the loud noise when you go into your Christmas shopping, provided there's no riots, although they'd be triggers as well. You know, that can be really difficult. And then going into a shop when you want to buy a gift and there's perfume sprayed at you left, right, and center. Do you want to try this? Want to try that? The smells are unreal. So they are, and they can really trigger. So the combinations of these, and then having to gather in a place where there might be all of these together. So people will be spraying their gifts of perfume to try them out. You'll have the blinky lights, you'll have the rich food, you'll have a lot of alcohol, people laughing and shouting and so on and so forth. Again, migraine is not, these aren't suitable places for people with migraine. So it's really difficult to go. So a lot of people will try and, you know, not go if possible. And unfortunately, that can rub other people up the wrong way. So a couple of facts about migraine. These are from the World Health Organization. Migraine is a complex neurological condition, and it's classified as the second most disabling disease in the world for those under 50, and the first in the world for women. That's purely because of our hormones. Us women are treated with the extra hormonal burden. That's the only reason. But the second most disabling disease in the world, that's huge. And I mean, it just seems to be, why are people not aware of this? It's the second most disabling disease in the entire world, you know, for people under 50. It just doesn't seem like anybody knows that, unfortunately. And it is a hidden illness, as we've shown. So between attacks and even during attacks, sufferers can look healthy and well and can seem like there's nothing wrong with them. And the burden of migraine and other primary headache disorders are associated with disability, pain, financial cost, because a lot of people with migraine and other headache disorders like that cannot work or have to take reduced hours or have to change their career. So all of the kind of plans for financial security, for buying houses and so on and so forth, that can all go out the window, unfortunately. Mental health issues can come hand in hand with migraine and the situation that migraine can leave you in. Depression, again, depression is part of migraine, not just because of migraine, but because of the way your brain is wired as well. Then isolation and loneliness from people stepping back from life because others don't understand or it's too overwhelming, and a significantly reduced quality of life, which is quite sad. I mean, this is the kind of thing that we do try to help people with, and we try to work on. We do things like self-management courses. Naomi's after just finishing a self-management course, and just trying to give people the tools to try and help themselves with getting back to a higher quality of life. It's quite difficult for a lot of people, and this whole aspect is very, very much dismissed. So I'm going to go through, or we're going to go through the typical symptoms. And when I say typical, like it says down the bottom, they refer to the international classification of disease headache diagnostic criteria by the International Headache Society. But it's individual to every person living with the disorder. Like a leopard, no two migraineurs have the same migraine. Like no two leopards have the same spots, apparently. So you may get some, you may get all, or you may get none of the following symptoms, but that does not mean you don't have migraine. It does not mean that you're any less of or that you suffer any less than anybody else who lives with migraine. So these are the typical symptoms of migraine. So the moderate to extreme pain, The pain scale is generally 1 to 10. So you might be asked to rate your pain from 1 to 10. 1 being it's okay, to 10 being the worst headache or the worst pain you've ever experienced. A one-sided throbbing headache, if the headache is there, it's generally one-sided, but it can switch sides, and sometimes it can be both sides, but generally speaking, it's one-sided throbbing, and it's made worse by movement. So a lot of people who live with migraine tend to stay sitting or lie down and not move during the worst part of the attack or the worst symptoms. Moderate to extreme nausea and vomiting. And as we've seen in a lot of cases, particularly with children, stomach ache. And I will say that some adults can get abdominal migraine as well. It's not exclusive to children, but it's more common in children. And vomiting in children can often signify the end of an attack. That's not always the case, but it can, after a sleep or that kind of thing, it can often signify that the attack is coming to an end. Dizziness, vertigo, again, from moderate to extreme. So a lot of people will have dizziness with a lot of their symptoms, but vertigo is a massive thing, and that can be particularly difficult for people with vestibular migraine, where there is an effect on their inner ear. Heightened sensitivities, so from light, sound, smell, touch, even your hair hurts. So a lot of people can't brush their hair or wear ponytail in their hair. Light, sound, smell, the sensitivities can be during an attack, or can be in between an attack, or can be every day if you live with chronic migraine. Visual disturbances and blind spots, that's part of what's called aura, which is a wave of electricity that goes across your brain, and it can hit different parts. It doesn't necessarily have to be visual. It can be pins and needles in your face or your limbs and your hands and your feet. Confusion, clumsiness, what's called brain fog, but there's some controversy about brain fog because it's kind of a generalized term. Fear, anxiety, and depression go hand in hand, as we've said. Allodynia, which is extreme skin sensitivity, and then aphasia, which is speech confusion. So you can see, like, migraine has a myriad of symptoms, and it varies, like I said, from person to person. So Naomi is going to go through the phases of migraine, and this is the phases of a typical attack.
Yeah, again, I'm kind of just focusing on the typical, this is just an example really of how the phases can pan out. It doesn't necessarily mean it's true for you. And all that, I suppose the fact that there's classic symptoms and classic phases can sometimes feed into why it can be hard to figure out what's really going on for people too. So so you're, I suppose, starting off baseline there, your normal appetite, everything's in balance, and then maybe the migraine is triggered at some point here for some reason. Next thing, you might get the prodrome phase, and these can be some kind of, when I suppose you're kept your diary, or even just a kind of, you're observing yourself, you're aware and self-awareness, you can kind of sometimes start to see some red flags that can crop up at this point, which can be helpful. Like maybe you're suddenly more aware of your senses, maybe you've got a craving, maybe you're yawning more, maybe you need to go kind of find your room to the loo, or then the aura, if it's going to kick in, and we think aura kicks in around 20% of cases, and that can start to present. Then you might start seeing some whatever way your aura presents, some blurred vision or whatever. And then these big words here, photophobia, phonophobia, osmophobia, they're all essentially talking about different senses and a phobia of senses, smell, sight, sound, things that trigger, things that are at this point now, even the headache is starting to peak, and you're really just not wanting to be around anything that's going to make you feel bad or worse. And a lot of people at this point might be feeling, if they can't access it, or maybe they're there, they want to just be in a dark room and be still. And if vomiting is something that comes for you, maybe sometimes people can recover then by going through the deep part of recovery, and afterwards then. And this is something that again can be very invisible for people as well. It's the headache part. Sometimes people can understand what sometimes others may not understand. Even might be hard to even give yourself a bit of a break from the recovery phase, where the aftermath, where you're feeling exhausted, you're just whacked, and there's loads of different presentations, and that can go on for days. And hopefully at some point then you go back to normal. So we have the gift that just keeps giving then. So there's loads of just different lesser known of the symptoms that you can experience. And I know we have one of our talks, and one of our longtime friends, Dr. Nick Silver, does go into this in a lot of detail on one of his videos that's online on our YouTube as well. If you wanted to just, if something hits home or relates to you there. And a lot of people kind of go, oh, and they might just kind of make them realize, oh, this is part of that, or can help to join the dots, just kind of understand some of the lesser known, lesser understood symptoms. Maybe not the first thing that you'd associate with migraine.
So we asked people a while back, how do they feel or how migraine affects people? So we had a couple of surveys which have some pretty stark results, with 91% of participants agreeing that it had a significant impact on their mental health. High percentage, again, affected their professional lives. Most people felt that it was misunderstood, completely misunderstood. With regards to employment, they have spoken about it at work, but there had been no supports or accommodations put into effect. A lot of people have had a direct impact on their professional life. So they've had to change jobs, or like I said before, they had to change their career because the migraine interfered with that, but also because there were no supports and that kind of thing available for them. And then 72% of participants agreed to feeling lonely because of having migraine, again, because there's a step back out of general life, and a lot of it can lead to isolation because of the lack of understanding and the lack of, or again, the perception that it's just a headache and you should be able to take a pill and work away, you're fine, because most people with headaches can do that, they feel. And then 22% noting that they had to change their profession. I mean, this, if you plan on being a lawyer and suddenly you find yourself being something completely different that you didn't plan for at all, that can be devastating. So it can. So, it's not easy it's not an easy thing to live with. So a lot of people don't understand that. And that's, again, how the invisibility part can affect people. So there's a lot of things, like I said, depression and anxiety, and that can come hand in hand with migraine. And it's really easy for us to kind of say, oh, well, think positively and all this kind of thing. It's not always possible to do that, but we have a kind of and there are ways of doing it from time to time when you feel like doing it. So a lot of the negative thoughts that you associate with migraine would include, oh, it's never going to go. I'm going to have this forever. I don't want to do this, not again. There's nothing I can do. And then, why me? It's my fault. It's their fault, the doctor's fault. It's controlling my life. And you might think of yourself as weak. No, that's wrong anyway. You're not weak. You're still here. So you're definitely not weak. So if those are the feelings, or some of the feelings that you feel, then trying to turn them into positives can be helpful. It's not an easy thing to do, especially when you're in dire circumstances, but it may help from time to time. So one of the things you can say is, it won't last forever. You've been through pain before and survived. So that's really good. You know that it doesn't last forever. It can go. It's a pain, but it can go. It doesn't feel good now, but it won't kill me. That can be quite good. This is a big one. This is not my fault. If everybody can get that into their heads, it is not your fault, then we're doing our jobs. This is not your fault. This is a brain disorder. The next one, I'm doing the best I can. Yes, absolutely. I'm doing brilliantly, because it's not easy from day to day. My thoughts don't control my life. I do. That's a tough one to get into your head, but if you try to do it often enough, sometimes it can actually take effect. The next one is, I'm okay. It can be a nice thought, kind of just, it's like a little kind of a pat on the back to say to yourself, I'm okay, I can do this. The next one then is, I'm strong, I'm still here. Like I said, you're strong, you're not weak, you're battling this, you're living with this every day. And, you know, it proves that you're strong, the fact that you're still there and you're still doing it and you're still looking for help and ways to combat it, or ways to take control back. Ideas on how to make migraine more visible. Again, this can be quite daunting. You know, awareness, creating or educating. Like I said, it's not easy to talk about educating healthcare professionals and other professionals because they have a lot of education. But when we say educate, we mean create awareness with them. So doctors, teachers, employers, friends, family, and yourself, because arming yourself can be one of the, with information, can be one of the best ways to help other people understand what migraine is like. And then if you wanted to create a campaign for awareness and tell others how it feels, join other groups of migraineurs, lobby politicians, lobby health personnel, and support, join an organisation like the Migraine Association of Ireland. Doesn't have to be us, but we're there. Lots of countries have different migraine organisations, so have a look around, Google migraine organisation in your country and see, you know, what comes up. Hold migraine coffee mornings to, you know, to meet other people or to fundraise for migraine as well, you know, and see if that can make a difference to help other people and to help yourself. There's some of the ways. If you come up with other ways to make it more visible, absolutely. Oh, and another thing that you can do is invite us in to do talks in the workplace. We can do talks for healthcare professionals as well. And we can do talks in schools if necessary as well. So that's another way of raising awareness and that kind of, and support. So yeah, you can always come to us and ask us to do something as well. So Naomi's just going to go quickly through some lifestyle tips. I can't say that word.
If I could just find the mute button to turn myself on. So yeah, like, I mean, as Dave really emphasized there beautifully, that it's not your fault, and lifestyle tips, it's the biggest lifestyle tip you can get really is just to have an awareness of yourself, your triggers. And it's just an awareness, it's not an onus. These are just things that we know from research that has helped, that can help some people when they understand and when they can take certain steps, and it's just trying things out. So I won't go too much into detail. Routine, migraine loves routine, we know that. So we can apply that to nearly everything. Routine, if we want to exercise, it can be a trigger, but you can hopefully find a routine, because we do also know that migraine, unfortunately, can come with comorbidities too. You know, like heart comorbidities and stroke. It's important just to try and find something that works for you, that you can get done. But again, routine is helpful with exercise, routine is helpful with sleep, not too much, not too little. They kind of say, I can't remember off the top of my head what exactly the hours are, but the main thing is that maybe you're in a routine, you go to bed at the same time every night, you get up at the same time every night. Generally, it doesn't mean you have to do that all the time, but the idea is just to kind of have a general if that works for you. Stress management, it's about looking at ways that you are coping with stress, and can you cope with stress better to help. There's lots of facts there, but just different ways, different dietary factors that we do know that does trigger. Staying hydrated is a big thing, and maybe just having some food before you do go and plan an activity or an exercise, or even a social thing can be good as well. They're planning, and you have to be obviously very organized and together if you have migraine, which is again another reason why it comes back to the invisibility thing, doesn't it? About You're trying to keep all these plates spinning to manage your condition. And that's another thing, you know, you could be a Buddhist monk and you could get migraine. You know, like it's not about being perfect or having a really super, you know, life happens and stress happens, and there'll always be phases, ups and downs in life as well. And I suppose sometimes maybe it's just looking at these things and thinking every now and again when it gets on top of you, what can I look at? What am I falling down on? Not you or you've fallen down on, but where can I just make a few changes to help yourself, to support you and to put yourself first. And the most important thing you can do for your family, for your friends, for your career is to look after you, put yourself first. So we're very selfless in Ireland. We're brought up to be very selfless. So it's just important that you remember that it's not selfish to put yourself first. It's actually the biggest thing you can do for your friends and family is to see yourself and look after yourself. Yeah, so, and just an easy way of remembering all these lifestyle tips. A lot of people refer to seeds, so it's seeds for success. It's just kind of a handy algorithm. What's the word I'm looking for? Anagram. It's sleep, exercise, eating, stress, and I should have put diet in before stress, not seeds.
So that's kind of it for this presentation or this video. We hope that you have gained something out of it, and that we've made it a little bit more visible. I don't know if we have or not, but if you want a copy of the slides that we've used, we can send them to you. I know that we went through a couple of them so quickly. So if you do want more, you can definitely email us at info@migraine.ie to get the slides from this video. If you want to contact us, if you have any questions or comments, please, again, info@migraine.ie, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. And if you want us to come and do a talk for anyone in the workplace or anything like that, again, info@migraine.ie. On this day of International Day of Persons with Disabilities are not all, as we've seen, visible, and it's important to highlight the invisible ones, because people will fall over you if you have a cast on your arm if you need help, but they won't fall over you if you can't show them that you're ill. So again, talking about it, creating awareness, and hopefully things like this can help with that. And actually feel free to show this to people as well, just in case you think it might help. So at that, we leave it at that, and I'd like to thank Naomi, my colleague, for helping me with this, and hopefully we will see you all again at one of our talks. Take care.
Bye. Thank you.